Hi there and welcome to this video lecture on Buddhism, and in this lecture I'm going to talk about the role of Nirvana and karma, two central ideas to Buddhist thinking and the tradition, and I'm going to talk about these ideas and the contribution they make to Buddhist thinking. So in the tradition we get this metaphor for the path to Nirvana. And the Buddha says, as if amongst a person wandering in the forest, in the jungle, were to see an ancient path, an ancient road along which men of old had gone, and he would follow it, and as he followed it, he would see an ancient city, an ancient seat of kings which men of old had inhabited, possessing parks, gardens, lotus ponds, with high walls, a delightful place. Just so, monks, I saw an ancient path, the ancient road, along which the fully awakened ones of old had gone. I followed it, and following it, I knew directly old age and death, the arising of old age and death, the ceasing of old age and death, and the path leading to the ceasing of old age and death. Nirvana literally means blowing out or extinguishing. And we get a sort of sense of it from an early discourse of the Buddhas, which is called the Fire Sermon. So in the Fire Sermon, the Buddha describes this idea of experience as kind of this idea of everything is burning, everything is on fire. At one time, the Blessed One, the Buddha, was living near Gaia, at Gaia's head with 1,000 bhikkhus. Then the Blessed One, bhikkhus are monks, then the Blessed One addressed them, everything, monks, is burning. What, monks, is everything that is burning? The eyes, monks, is burning, form is burning, eye consciousness is burning, eye contact is burning. The feeling that arises dependent on eye contact, whether pleasant, unpleasant or neutral, that is also burning. With what is it burning? It is burning with the fire of passion, the fire of hatred, the fire of delusion. I declare that it is burning with the fire of birth, decay, death, grief, lamentation, pain, sorrow, and despair. So this idea that experience is a kind of fire, a burning fire. And so Nirvana is a kind of extinguishing of the fire of passion, the fire of hatred, and the fire of delusion. So these three things are called the three poisons: greed, hatred, and delusion. Greed is when we pull things toward ourselves, we want to possess things. Hate is the opposite, when we sort of push away, when we reject and want to get rid of things from our experience. And delusion is ignorance or confusion about how things really are. And as we've seen, one of the ways in which we're confused is our sense of things as being permanent and things as having a sort of persisting essence, when in fact they don't, when in fact everything is subject to a process of change and transformation. So we can think of Nirvana, we can think of the three poisons as causing this kind of burning, this manic fire, that Nirvana is the extinguishing of that fire. So Nirvana is a kind of quieting of the sort of the parts of existence that lead us astray, or the elements of our emotional life and our thinking that cause problems for us. So if we understand it like this, Nirvana is not sort of an otherworldly state. It's not something that sort of, is associated with a kind of otherworldliness, or sort of post-human thing. It's a psychological and ethical reality, a transformed state of personality characterized by peace, deep spiritual joy, compassion, and awareness. And all of that comes from our ability to quiet the three delusions, to quiet the three poisons that keep us tied to existence. So greed, hatred, and delusion are the things that keep us tied to the realm of samsara. And samsara in Buddhism is the sort of the world of continued rebirth. Ultimately, our aim is to get out of that world, to escape from the world of rebirth, to find liberation from it, by sort of and the point is to no longer be tied to the karma of reality, and we'll talk about that shortly. So greed is a form of attachment, our sort of attachment to things, and of course that's related to our craving and our clinging for things. Hatred is excuse me, the opposite, our aversion to things, our desire to push things away, to reject experience that's uncomfortable. Delusion is the ignorance, the failure to grasp what reality is really like and what things are really like. So one of the reasons we suffer is because of delusion, and it's mistaking, or it's sort of confusing us about what experience is really like. So one thing about greed, hatred, and delusion is that they are self-perpetuating. They motivate certain sorts of actions, and these actions in turn tend to reinforce the three poisons. So the idea here is that once we sort of start off on this path, they tend to be self-reinforcing, and they tend to lead to further actions which sort of reinforce this path. There's something about the sort of chain of causation here, dependent arising, that's being expressed here, a truth about that idea that when certain things happen, they lead to other things. When those things happen, they bring about other things. So when we act from greed, it reinforces our desire to sort of to act from greed, to reinforce that sense of greed. It reinforces the idea that we're going to be acting in greedy ways, and that in turn has causal effects which sort of again reinforce the idea. So they motivate certain actions, and these actions are sort of reinforced in a kind of feedback loop. So when greed leads me to take what is not mine, I'm reinforcing the belief that there is an I that can be made better off through what it possesses. So greed reinforces the sort of delusion of the existence of the I, and in doing so, it creates an expectation of the I that experience is always going to be pleasurable and we're always going to get what we want. So that feedback loop keeps running and keeps us trapped in the realm of samsara. So in order to counteract the three poisons, we have to develop habits that serve as antidotes to greed, hatred, and delusion, habits that can lead us on alternative sort of causal paths and causal continuities, that rather than reinforcing, say, something like greed, we reinforce good traits, and we reinforce positive things that are going to lead us on the right path. So honesty makes us more likely to accept the truth about ourselves, and refraining from taking what is not ours diminishes our desire for possessions. So by acting in these ways, we can create a sort of more positive causal path and continuity that leads us in a different direction. And of course, the Noble Eightfold Path is supposed to sort of guide us in making these choices, that we sort of show the right sort of mental habits, the right speech, and the right ways of acting. So the belief in reincarnation, that beings are reincarnated in another form after their death, was a common belief in the ancient world, in which Buddhism first developed. The understanding of rebirth that arose in ancient India was, however, distinctive because of its association with karma. Now, karma is the idea that the circumstances of future rebirths are determined by the moral deeds a person performs in this life. So it seems to have a kind of moral focus, that how you're reborn is determined by how you happen to act in this particular life. So karma looks like it's a sort of it's a moral sort of claim, when in fact, as we'll see shortly, it's not. It's often expressed in terms of the idea of you reap what you sow. So our actions in life are sort of are going to determine what happens in the future. So here's the essential thing. It's not a system of rewards and punishments. It's not like it's not punishment for our sins when things happen to us. It's not a law that anyone has passed, and it's not a law that anyone enforces. Right? No one's there to enforce it. It's simply an impersonal law, like the cause of gravity, right? Like the law of gravity. Sorry. It just happens, right? When this happens, something else happens. When a certain set of circumstances arise, something comes into existence. That's all it is in terms of its impersonal kind of basis. That it's not sort of moralizing the idea of punishment. It's simply telling us that actions have certain effects. And in fact, moral actions are unique in having transitive and intransitive effects. So let's explore what that means. So transitive effects are the direct impact our actions have on others. So we can have a direct impact on others. We can we can do them harm. We can save them from harm. We can sort of directly impact others' lives. But our actions can also have intransitive effects. Moral actions also affect the agent. So individuals create themselves through their moral choices. Right? So we become who we are through the choices we make. And those effects sort of persist with us through time, and through our actions, we sort of create ourselves as being persons of a certain kind. So this idea of intransitive effects is expressed in this idea, this famous sort of this famous saying, which is sow an act, reap a habit, sow a habit, reap a character, and sow a character, reap a destiny. So over time, things accumulate and sort of add up to habits and character and destiny. And those are the effects that happen because of the actions that we've performed. So we could think about it like this. The soft clay is our character on the potter's wheel. And when we make moral choices, we hold ourselves in our hands and shape ourselves for good or ill. So what happens to us, we can think of as the sort of karmic fruit, the result of what we do. Right? So there's no sort of law that's being enforced. It's not like we sort of brought before a criminal law. It's simply the fact that actions and things that we do have further consequences. It's simply the idea of dependence arising, right? That when what happens to us is the fruit of things that we've done. They're causally connected. They're linked in a causal continuity. Now, moksha is liberation from the realm of samsara. So ultimately, this is what we want, to escape this cycle of birth, rebirth, and death and rebirth, by experiencing moksha. So release from samsara is one way Buddhists will think about the idea of nirvana. So once we've quieted those poisons, once we've sort of quieted our greed, our aversion, and our ignorance, then we sort of blow out the flame of suffering, of dissatisfaction, and we've reached that stage of contentment and well-being that Buddhism calls nirvana. Okay, so the tasks for this week. So as usual, we have a markup annotation task, and there is a voice thread task this week, a discussion post, and of course quiz 6, which is due at the end of the week. The final exam, which will be on Stoicism and Buddhism, the last couple of modules, the final exam will be available early next week.